Hello and welcome to my Yu-Gi-Oh channel. So today we're looking at a new pack from Duel Links. It's called Mainbox 32 Infinite Ray, and we'll be covering the rares. So again, we begin with one of the numbers. This is number 83, Galaxy Queen. It's a dark attribute spellcaster type Xyz monster. It's a rank 1 with 500 attack and 500 defense. It needs 3 level 1 monsters to summon it, and once per turn you can detach 1 Xyz material from this card. Until the opponent's next end phase, the monsters you currently control cannot be destroyed by battle, and if they attack a defense position monster, inflict piercing battle damage to your opponent. Whilst this effect is quite decent because it does provide your monsters with battle protection, and the piercing effect is okay, summoning this card immediately is not really that good. I mean, you're going to have to run a certain number of level 1s to consistently bring this out, and even so, you know, it has only 500 attack and defense. It's not going to be lasting very long. It would have been nice if it had the anime effect where it was only able to be destroyed by another number monster, but it was saying this in the anime, it was barely used. I think this was seen very early on. I think it might have been either the 4th or the 5th number monster that Yuma got. First, obviously, is number 39, then he got number 17, which was Leviathan Dragon, then he got number 34. Yeah, I think this was 4th, so obviously at that point they didn't want it to be too powerful. Number 68, Xenophond the Sky Prison, is a dark attribute rock type Xyz monster. It's a rank 8 with 2100 attack and 2700 defense. It requires 2 level 8 monsters to summon it. Its effect is it gains 100 attack and defense for each monster in the graveyards. Once per turn, you can detach 1 material from this card until the end of your opponent's next turn. This card cannot be destroyed by card effects. Also, neither player can special summon monsters from the graveyards. So unlike with number 83 Galaxy Queen, this was one of the number monsters that was final ones to be released, and lots of players were complaining about how Konami had promised that they would fulfill all of the number monsters and that they would release a number for each of them, all the way up to the 107, but there were a few missing. I think this was one of the last 3 or 4. Don't quote me on that, but I think that was the case. Its effect is quite decent because, firstly, okay, it does need 2 level 8 monsters. It's becoming a lot easier to do that these days with the more support that's coming out for Duel Links. And within the Yu-Gi-Oh! Zeal era, just looking at that case, being able to gain stats, each monster in both graveyards means if your opponent has 5 and you've got 5, that's 10, that's an extra 1000, that's enough to get over Blue Eyes White Dragon, and, you know, it has a decent attack and defense range. Being able to protect itself from card effects is also quite good. If you're going into the battle phase, that is a good way of just generally protecting it. Although there are cards such as Drowning Mirror Force that will still affect it because it just can't be destroyed by those effects. If they're sent, that's a different matter altogether. But it is also a good way of counteracting decks such as Blue Eyes White Dragon and the Red Eyes Black Dragon, who like to consistently special summon from their graveyards. So if you're going to run anything that's anti-Blue Eyes, this is definitely a card that you want to be running. And Stellar Omega is a light attribute Beast Warrior type Xyz monster. It's a rank 4 with 2400 attack and 500 defense. It requires 2 level 4 light attribute monsters to summon it, and once per turn during either player's turn, you can detach 1 Xyz material from this card. All Constellar monsters you currently control are unaffected by spell or trap cards this turn. This is quite a decent effect because it does provide all of your Constellars, including itself, with that level of protection. Depending on if you think you can finish your opponent within the turn, that's always a good thing. You are still susceptible to your opponent's card effects, so if they've got anything like Man-Eater Bug, Hane, or the like that can use these effects, you're still going to get dealt with by that. Alternatively, your opponent could use something like Enemy Controller just to get rid of this to steal it before it can use its effect, or to trigger off of the effect before it can use that to chain to it. So it goes into defense mode. Obviously with 500 defense, it's going to be easily run over during the next turn. So that's a major downside to it. Digital Bug Scariator is a light attribute insect type Xyz monster. It's a rank 3 with 1800 attack and 1400 defense, and it requires 2 or more level 3 light attribute insect type monsters. Once per turn and during either player's turn, you can detach 2 Xyz materials from this card, then target one monster your opponent controls, change its battle position, and if you do, it has its effects negated until the end of this turn. Once per turn, when this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle and sends it to the graveyard, you can attach that destroyed monster to this card as Xyz material. Generally speaking, the digital bug monsters are a group of monsters that, while they focus on dealing with defense position monsters and changing battle modes, it's an okay effect because being able to just shut down your opponent's effect as well as changing their battle mode means you can get over some of those really annoying cards, such as Blue Eyes White Maiden, which is just, I hate that card, having to face that without having to run additional cards just to negate 1 or 2 cards. Of course, it's then able to place the materials when it destroys those cards, but the downside of that is if your opponent is able to protect them, or it's a very simplistic effect, it will require you to do that twice to be able to recover its Xyz materials. It's not such a powerful effect that it justifies using both materials, but with something like Big Eye, yes, I could understand why you might want to look at forcing that kind of change to it to detach 2 materials, but this is just quite a weak card. It's a little bit concerning that it had to have that just to bring it out. Digital Bug Corbage is a light attribute insect type Xyz monster. It's a rank 5 with 200 attack and 1800 defense. It requires 2 or more level 5 light attribute insect type monsters to summon it. You can also Xyz summon this card by detaching 2 Xyz materials from a rank 3 or 4 insect type Xyz monster you control, then using that Xyz monster as the Xyz material. Xyz materials attached to that monster also become Xyz materials on this card. Once per turn, you can detach 1 Xyz material from this card, then target 1 defense position monster your opponent controls, shuffle it into the deck. Once per turn, if the battle position of a monster on the field is changed, except during the damage step, you can attach 1 Xyz insect type monster from your graveyard to this card as Xyz material. Again, this is very much focused on that defense strategy. If your opponent pushes their monsters to be changed from their battle modes, maybe to the more favorable mode that punishes them because you're then able to attach more Xyz materials. This is effective against certain decks. I mean, Subterras are defensive. They're probably one of the better examples of how this could be used to counter a deck. But with 2200 attack, it doesn't have enough stats on its own on running it. And generally speaking, okay, it does shuffle the card into the deck, but this is dependent on what your opponent is running. If they're running a very offensive deck, this is quite useless. There are other cards that actually do this just as well, if not better, within their own archetype. Eren the Lightsworn Monk being a key example of that. Drillroid is another example of that as well, which are able to counter defensive-based decks. And I just don't understand why you would run this in an extra deck that's as small as potentially 7 cards. Digital Bug Rhinoceros is a light attribute insect type Xyz monster. It's a rank 7 with 2600 attack and 2200 defense. It requires 2 or more level 7 light attribute insect type monsters to summon it. You can also Xyz summon this card by detaching 2 Xyz materials from a rank 5 or 6 insect type Xyz monster you control, then using that Xyz monster as the Xyz material. Xyz materials attached to that monster also become Xyz materials on this card. If this card attacks a defense position monster, inflict piercing battle damage to your opponent. Once per turn and during either player's turn, you can detach 1 Xyz material from this card. Destroy the face-up monster your opponent controls with the highest defense, all if tied. So this is quite a unique effect in what it does. It's got the ability to punish your opponent for playing their monsters in defense mode, and it's the Digital Bug's boss monster. It's not powerful enough because it's just a piercing effect, and it's a mini kind of like Raigeki effect, but it requires your opponent's monsters to be in face-up position. So they either have to be in face-up defense position or they have to be in attack mode. And of course, to get the most value out of these cards, they do have to have the same defense stat. So if they're all different, it's just the highest one. That doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be your strongest attack monster. There are some monsters that have very strong attack, and very weak defense. So you're going to actually have to clear those out first before you're able to trigger the effect. And remember, with Duel Links, you don't get a main phase 2. So it's not a case of you can then go into your battle phase, get rid of the monster with the highest defense, and then use its effect. You would then have to wait until the next turn, and then you'd have to also make sure this card is protected. So you had the turn to be able to use that effect, which is a major downside. This is what the digital bugs are as an archetype. They've got 3 Xyz monsters, a rank 3, a rank 5, and a rank 7. I think they do need more ranks, or at least another version of themselves as an alternative rank 3 for rank 3, 5, and 7 would provide them with more options and seem a little bit less predictable than how they can be run. In Stellar, Kaos is a light attribute beast warrior type level 4 with 1800 attack and 700 defense. Cannot be used as a synchro material, and up to twice per turn you can target one Stellar monster on the field, then activate one of these effects. You can increase its level by 1 or reduce its level by 1. So potentially what this does is it helps you just go into your Pleiades or your Ptolemy M7. It makes things a little bit more flexible. Of course, you can lower them to below that as well, but there is that kind of restriction. You've only got you've got about 3 Xyz monsters that you can cover with this effect. I can understand why you wouldn't allow it to be used for synchro material, otherwise that would make it a bit too flexible and too broken for an archetype that focuses on Xyz summoning. Star Seraph Scout is a light attribute fairy type level 4 with 1200 attack and 1800 defense. Its effect is when this card is normal summoned, you can special summon one Star Seraph monster from your hand. This is quite a decent effect because this helps you to follow on the change and then go into your various Xyz monsters. Of course, there are limitations to it. It's a decent effect in of itself. Star Seraph Scale is a light attribute fairy type level 4 with 1500 attack and 900 defense. Its effect is when this card is special summoned, you can special summon one Star Seraph monster from your hand. Then you can place one light attribute monster from your graveyard on top of your deck. An Xyz monster that was Xyz summoned using 3 monsters, including this card, on the field as Xyz materials gains this effect. Once per turn, while this card has Xyz material, if a monster is special summoned from the hand, immediately draw 1 card. So not only is this able to actually set up your deck, because it adds a card from your graveyard to the top of your deck, but it enables you to then, every time you special summon, provided you've got Xyz material on that Xyz monster, be able to draw a card, adding to that advantage. This is the final one of the Star Seraph monsters out of the Xyz monsters that Demon has, but I think this was released slightly after Yu-Gi-Oh! Zeal, or at a point where he doesn't actually use this monster. Digital Bug Web Solder is a light attribute insect type level 3 with 500 attack and 1500 defense. It cannot be used as Xyz material for an Xyz summon, except for the Xyz summon of an insect type monster. Once per turn, you can target one face-up attack position monster you control, change it to defense position, and if you do, special summon one level 3 insect type monster from your hand in defense position. An Xyz monster that was summoned using this card on the field as Xyz material gains this effect. If it is Xyz summoned, the defense of all face-up monsters your opponent controls become 0. Also, change them to defense position. So what this helps you to do is provide you with more card advantage, because you're then able to summon it into your digital bugs. It then lets you go into your I think it was your rank 3 Xyz monster, and of course that means you're then able to switch all of your opponent's battle modes to defense mode, and provided they'd been in attack, that means they all become 0 defense, and that means you can get over your opponent's monster. The downside is if they're in face-down defense positions such as Subterrors, this effect isn't going to trigger, but otherwise it's quite a decent start. Arched Dragon is a fire attribute dragon type level 3 with 1400 attack and 1100 defense. Its effect is when this card is destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, you can special summon one dragon-type monster with 1500 or less attack from your deck. This is a very versatile card for many of the dragons. You can use it for even the level monsters for the armed dragons, as the original one, level 3, is 1200 attack, and so covers this. It can also be used to basically search for any of your weaker dragons, which might have quite devastating effects, or just help support you in tribute summoning into further dragon type monsters. This is why I see it being a problem in the future, with certain dragons needing to be banned, of course, with the evolution of the Blue Eyes White Dragon structure decks and the general support they seem to be favouring over any other archetype or even based on types. Kuribolt is a light attribute thunder type level 1 with 300 attack and 200 defense. The effect is you can target one Xyz monster that has material, detach one material from it, and if you do, special summon one Kuribolt from your deck. Cannot be used as synchro material. Okay, my opinion of this card is it's just a means of trying to get rid of some of your opponent's Xyz materials to prevent them from using their effects. It's quite useful if you're going for a rank 1, but currently there aren't many. I think there's Galaxy Queen, and I think that's the only one, and then you've got some weird ones like Mirror the Starbreaker, very obscure, so it's not used for that. Of course, it can still be used for a tribute summon, there's that option, but generally it's just as a means of disruption, and this was one of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Zeal era versions of Kuriboh. Parsec, the Interstellar Dragon. Well, at least that's how Mizar pronounced it within Yu-Gi-Oh! Zeal. He's another one of the Barian Emperors, and he was the one with the Galaxy Eyes Tachyon Dragon. This is a light attribute dragon type level 8 with 800 attack and 800 defense. The effect, if you control a level 8 monster, you can normal summon this card without tributing. Very simplistic effect. When we get number 107 Galaxy Eyes Tachyon Dragon, it'll be very useful for that. It was one of the key cards he used in order to bridge the gap to get level 8 monsters out of there. There's a couple of others. Other than that, it doesn't really have a use. It's just used for Xyz material for a rank 8 monster. But you've got a couple of them already out. Do see this is another reason why dragon types are going to get banned. Schwarzschild Limit Dragon is a dark attribute dragon type level 8 with 2000 attack and 0 defense. If your opponent controls a monster with 2000 or more attack, you can special summon this card from your hand. Another reason why rank 8s are going to become much more powerful as we start building through Xyz monsters, through some of the more main boxes and the mini boxes themselves as well. This was another key card that Mizar used in order to go into his number 107. Labradorite Dragon is a dark attribute dragon type tuner monster. It's a level 6 with 0 attack and 2400 defense. Okay, you might be wondering what this card is doing in here. Well, the answer is obvious. With the Hieratic monsters, they work with normal monsters as well, so that's why this is here. It can be used to then bring out Hieratic Dragon of Tum, which is the rank 6, as this is a level 6. Alternatively, this is also a tuner, so you can go into a level 8 synchro monster if you want, or a level 7, depending on the other level monsters you have. The more variety of levels you have, the better synchro decks become, so this actually happens to both support directly synchros as well as indirectly support some Xyz decks. Be prepared for this to be one of the cards that gets banned soon. Rising Sun Slash is a equip spell with the effect equip only to a Utopia monster. It cannot be destroyed by card effects. Each time an attack is negated, place one Rising Sun counter on this card. The equipped monster gains 500 attack for each Rising Sun counter on this card. If the equipped monster you control would detach its material to activate its effect, you can treat this card as one of the materials. Okay, so the best thing about this card is it works specifically for Utopia. Using its materials, it means that it's getting rid of potentially 2. It stops your opponent's attacks, and then it becomes a 3500 attack monster if you've used this effect twice. Which is the intention. The other thing is this can also become Xyz material. You really are in a desperate situation where you have to use the effect again. It's quite decent because it also provides protection from card effects. There are a number of cards out there such as Inferno Fire Blast, Burst Stream of Destruction, and Dark Magic Attack, which are examples of physical attacks that each of the main character's monsters used. This is another name for one. Rising Sun Slash was the physical attack that Utopia used within the Yu-Gi-Oh! Zeal anime. Lightwing Shield is a quick play spell card with the effect when a monster's attack is negated, activate one of these effects. It becomes the end phase of this turn. Target one Utopia Xyz monster you control. Its attack becomes double its original attack until the end of this turn. If a Utopia Xyz monster you control would detach exactly one Xyz material to activate its effect. You can banish this card from your graveyard instead. Okay, so this is the anime effect of how Utopia uses its own Xyz effect. It calls its ability Lightwing Shield. To be able to straight away end the turn for your opponent means they can't do anything else. In Duel Links, this isn't necessarily that good because you don't get a main phase 2 anyway. So usually after the battle phase, you go to the end of the turn, but it does help to stop your opponent from doing anything for the rest of that turn. So it can keep the pressure on. The other thing is, of course, to be able to double up your Utopia's attack, then you can use something like Double or Nothing, and then it becomes a potentially 10,000 attack monster. That's how you can OTK with a Utopia-style deck. It's a brilliant side of the effect as well, and it provides the flexibility if you're under threat. You can always end the turn, you just forget about that turn, and then you're able to recover on yours. Potentially, if you can OTK your opponent, or if they risk going into your monster, you can just destroy it and cause them a lot of damage. I like the graveyard effect as well, because at least this provides it a little bit more of an advantage. Always having a graveyard effect is more relevant now. Hieratic Seal of Banishment is a normal trap card. Its effect is to tribute one hieratic monster to target one card your opponent controls, and you can banish that target. The best thing about this card is it works just on any hieratic monster, so this effect is really good. It's versatile because it can be used on spells, traps, and monsters. So if your opponent has a powerful monster on the field, chances are when it's banished, it's not going to be able to be recovered. I liken this a little bit to something like Karma Cut, but this is better. It works on any card, not just a face-up card, developing a lot of advantage through your Hieratics anyway, so getting rid of one of them isn't much of a cost. And the last card is Hieratic Seal of Reflection. It's a counter trap card with the effect, when a spell card, trap card, or monster effect is activated, contribute one hieratic monster, negate the activation, and if you do, destroy it. This is very much like a Solemn Warning or a Solemn Judgment for the deck. It's necessary to run, and I would advise running between 2 and 3. You know, you're going to get the benefit of disrupting your opponent, and losing one hieratic that you could potentially bring back in later in the game is always a good idea.